Chapter 554, Grand Wild's Peak. So, for them, if they were going to use this Primus-level wisp of sanctification, the first issue that had to be resolved was where the arcane glade was going to be located. After all, their cultivation levels could not be said to be high, and with this level of strength, it wouldn't matter if they were simply occupying a tertiary-level arcane glade, as it wouldn't attract too many covetous eyes. But things were very different when it came to occupying a Primus-level arcane glade. Once it was found out by an outsider, trouble would surely be stirred. Moreover, all three of them had prickly identities, characters that the Thousand Demon Ridge faction wanted to eliminate. Once the matter of the three of them owning an arcane glade was revealed, it would inevitably attract a large number of cultivators from that faction to attack them. Not to mention saving the arcane glade, they couldn't even guarantee their own safety then. I'll come up with an idea for the location, Li Baxin said. He had been in the Cloud River battlefield longer than Lu Yi, and his connections were also much vaster when compared to Lu Ye's, so he was the best person to leave this matter to. In that case, I'll be troubling you on that, senior brother. Feng Yuechan suggested. This Primus-level wisp of sanctification should create a small arcane glade, but even so, it's still an arcane glade that can accommodate 5 people. Currently we have 4 people. If junior brother Lu has any candidates for a 5th person, then bring them over. Otherwise, that empty spot would go to waste. As for candidates, I have another person on my side. He turned towards Li Baxin. Senior brother, do you still remember Zhu Jia? Feng Yuechan had never seen him before, but Li Baxin had, but they hadn't had too many chances to get to know each other. After some contemplation, he remembered who he was. That body-tempering cultivator? Him exactly. He came to the Cloud River battlefield a few months earlier than me, and I was going to look for him before heading into the Carnage Coliseum, but I was held up by what happened there and didn't get the chance to meet up with him even until today. Li Baxin nodded. His physique seems a little unusual. Little junior brother has good eyes. In that case, tell him to come join us. Then we'll have exactly 5 people. And, among the 5 of them, they had 1 body-tempering cultivator, 1 combat cultivator, 1 sword cultivator, and 2 spell cultivators, which was a very sensible party. If they encountered any trouble in the future, they should be able to deal with it with their combined strength. Lu Yi sighed. Zhu Jia seems to be bad with directions. Previously, when I asked him to join me, he got lost in a deep forest, so I asked him to wait there for me, so I need to go find him. Li Baxin was dumbfounded. To think such a thing could happen, it was hard to imagine how a large guy like Zhu Jia could get lost in the Cloud River battlefield, but it was inevitable for some special people to exist in this world who could not be judged by common sense. Then, while junior brother Lu is looking for junior brother Zhu Jia, senior brother and I can cultivate here with the amulets, and we can go and look for a place for the wisp of sanctification later. We'll contact each other again once we have any ideas. That sounds good. Lu Yi nodded in agreement. After their discussion, Lu Yi didn't stick around since Zhu Jia had been waiting for him for nearly 2 months. He wasn't sure whether he was getting impatient or not. A few moments later, in front of the Divine Trade Association, Lu Yi stepped out and summoned his flight-type artifact to take him into the air. Then he followed the directions that Zhu Jia had given him previously. Checking the 10-point map, Zhu Jia's current location seemed to be in the middle of a mountain range called the Grand Wild's Peak, and from the map, this Grand Wild's Peak seemed to occupy an extremely large area. Moreover, the core area was marked with one very eye-catching word, elite. This meant that an elite-level spirit beast was living in the depths of this Grand Wild's Peak. Elite was not a realm, but rather a title of extreme strength. The elite-level spirit beasts of the Spirit Creek battlefield have reached the limits of what the Spirit Creek battlefield could hold. The same was true of the Cloud River battlefield. Elite-level spirit beasts had reached the maximum of what the Cloud River battlefield could hold. But the two were vastly different in strength, naturally so as they were in different realms. Generally speaking, any place where an elite-level spirit beast took residence in was basically a forbidden area for cultivators. No cultivator was willing to trespass on the territory of an elite-level spirit beast unless they were sick of living. This was also the reason why Lu Yi was able to establish his dominance as a cultivator, leaving a huge impact on the hearts of the 1,000 Demon Ridge cultivators. No other cultivator had ever achieved such a feat in the Spirit Creek battlefield since the beginning of time, not even Feng Yuechan, who dominated the role of supremacy for over a decade. The fact that an elite-level spirit beast lay at the very core of Grand Wild's Peak meant undoubtedly that this was not a good place. Many spirit beasts were sure to be living in a deep forest such as this, and the deeper one trod into the mountainous wildernesses, the more dangers there would be. The Grand Wild's Peak was not very close, so even with Lu Ye's current speed, it would still take him 10 days to arrive. Luckily, the journey wasn't too boring with E and Amber to accompany him, and he could take turns controlling the flight-type artifact with E in day-night shifts. That way, they could shorten the journey by almost half. The journey was uneventful as they flew along, enjoying the unique scenery provided by the Cloud River battlefield. Occasionally, they would encounter some cultivators, but most of them wouldn't disturb them. For the few that were eager to cause trouble due to their high cultivation level or those with a large group, Lu Yi avoided them in advance or used glyph, soar to escape. With his current 4th order cultivation, as long as he didn't catch the attention of experts at the 8th or 9th order that wouldn't stop chasing after him, then there wouldn't be any danger. There were a considerable number of 8th and 9th order experts in the Cloud River battlefield, but no one would chase after a cultivator that they didn't know the faction of for no reason. While rushing on his way, Lu Yi didn't forget to swallow some pills and cultivate. 6 days passed by in a flash in that manner, and a travel-worn Lu Yi entered the Grand Wild's Peak, where he got into contact with Zhu Jia once more to confirm his exact location. When he matched it to the 10-point map, Lu Ye's brows were raised. Zhu Jia was quite the courageous sort, for he was not in the outer periphery of the Grand Wild's Peak's radius, but deeper inside. He wondered whether he had encountered any dangers after being there for so long. However, with that guy's special physique and thick skin, he had self-preservation capabilities that Lu Yi couldn't hope to match, so there was no need for him to worry about his safety. A considerable number of cultivators seemed to come in and out of the Grand Wild's Peak, generally in groups, but there were the occasional few loners. This place was a paradise for spirit beasts. There were about 7 or 8 such places scattered in the Cloud River battlefield, places where spirit beasts gathered in large numbers, and these places were naturally a hotspot for cultivators. Cultivators could hunt spirit beasts and gather some treasure so they can be exchanged for cultivation resources. Even though cultivators of major sects received a salary each month, it was not enough to support one's cultivation. The reason for that was not because the sects were stingy. Instead, there was a reason for doing so. If that monthly salary that the sects paid out were enough to satisfy the needs of each cultivator, then there would be no need for them to gain experience or adventure, which would be detrimental to one's growth. So, no matter how prosperous a sect was, they would never grant their disciples a salary that met all their cultivation needs, and the more powerful the sect, the more stringent they were. That way, they could promote independent habits in their disciples. Lu Yi did have sufficient cultivation resources. Even without entering the Cloud River battlefield, he could still raise the level of his cultivation through consuming spirit pills and consuming at the main sect. However, there wasn't much of a point in growing this way. Only by going through constant trials and tribulations could a cultivator have strength matching their realms. Simply growing one's cultivation level would only lead to superficial growth. It hadn't been more than half a day that Lu Yi entered the Grand Wild's Peak, and he could already feel the aftershocks from several battles around him. Clearly, they were from the battles of cultivators who were hunting the spirit beasts. He watched the battles from afar and found that the cultivators worked together well. They had members keeping a lookout on their surroundings, a vanguard, and a flank. With this division of labor, as long as they chose the right opponents, it wouldn't take long for them to finish the battle and gain some loot. He also came across several scattered spirit beasts on the way. They weren't that strong, so with E and Amber's help, they were able to kill them easily. He collected the beast blood, mutant cores, and some other useful items from the spirit beasts just in case. During his time in the Spirit Creek realm, Lu Yi had also hunted some spirit beasts, but the loot from those spirit beasts weren't worth much, so he didn't even waste the energy collecting them. However, things were different now that he was in the Cloud River realm. Without even mentioning the rest, the mutant cores found in the bodies of Cloud River realm spirit beasts alone were a favorite of Amber's when he left the Divine Trade Association. He had even spent some contribution points on mutant cores and left them in Amber's storage bag for it to snack on. Moreover, the blood of the spirit beasts could be useful in the way of tattoos. As for the rest of the materials, some of them could be used for pill refining, others could be used for artificing, and so on. The role that these materials could play would depend on whose hands they fell into. The deeper they went into the mountain range, the stronger the spirit beasts they encountered. On the contrary, the number of cultivators appeared to be fewer and fewer. If the outermost region of the Grand Wilds Peak could be said to be a training ground suitable for any Cloud River realm cultivator, then where Lu Yi was currently at was a dangerous place where one could not ascertain their safety unless they were in the Fifth Order at the very least. After reaching this place, Lu Yi didn't dare to fly recklessly in the sky either, since there were plenty of flying spirit beasts in this damned place. If he bumped into some of them in the air, then it would end in a difficult situation for him. He really couldn't understand why Zhu Jia had come to such a deep place in this mountain range when he had merely gotten lost. Once he found him, he would have to give him a good talking to stop him from simply stepping into dangerous places like these in the future. As night fell, Lu Yi was about to look for a hidden place to recover his energy when he suddenly felt something in his heart that caused him to turn his head in a certain direction. There seemed to be some noise coming from that direction. It was the sound of people talking, and there seemed to be a lot of them. After pondering for a moment, he put Amber into his spirit beast bag while he hid himself with glyph concealment, then he slowly crept in that direction. Within a few moments, a clearing appeared before his eyes where at least 30 to 40 cultivators were gathered. Some were alone while others were in groups of 3 or 5, but he had no idea what they were here for. However, as many of them sat cross-legged and cultivating to recover their strength, it seemed like they were getting ready for some sort of operation. There were so many people gathered here that it was clear they were not of the same clan. Some were not even from the same faction, and there were also those that were injured. Chapter 555, Birth of an Exotic Treasure? On the outskirts of the clearing, Lu Yi was lurking in hiding, silently observing them. He still had no idea what these people were gathered here for, and since he didn't know where they came from, he couldn't simply reveal himself. However, one after another, more cultivators came in from all directions, entering the clearing. Seeing this, Lu Yi thought for a moment before lifting the concealment glyph and walking forward. Several eyes swept to him, but they soon looked away. Lu Yi wore a mask that concealed his appearance, and he had put Amber into the spirit beast bag ahead of time. So, even if some of them felt that he was hiding his face but showing his tail, they wouldn't think much of it. Not every cultivator chose to act like this, but there were plenty of people who wore masks on the battlefield. He casually found a corner to sit down on, seemingly emulating what they were doing while silently paying attention to the movements around him. Soon enough, he managed to glean some information from the cultivators' conversations, but they spoke too vaguely, so he could only deduce that some sort of exotic treasure existed in the vicinity. Every night, a strange anomaly would appear, and these people were gathered here because they wanted to seize the treasure. Unfortunately, the place where the exotic treasure was located was extremely dangerous. Many powerful spirit beasts convened in that area, so even if these cultivators had been working hard for many days, none had been able to find out just what that exotic treasure was. Lu Yi had heard stories about exotic treasures coming into being before, and it could be considered a chance encounter, but exotic treasure that could give rise to visions were rare. Under normal circumstances, they had to be extremely precious objects, so it was no wonder so many cultivators had been attracted to this place. This was only what Lu Yi could see. There could be even more cultivators gathered around the area. After finding out the purpose of the people gathered here, Lu Yi lost interest. He had come to look for Zhu Jia after all. Even though exotic treasures were good things, for so many cultivators to have failed to get their hands on it after so many days, even Lu Yi did not believe that he would have much hope of obtaining it. With such thoughts, Lu Yi moved to leave. However, at that moment, a shout arose. "It's starting!" As soon as he said that, the cultivators here got up and swept into the air, all of them looking in a certain direction. Lu Yi also turned to look in the direction they were focused on, where he saw moon essence pouring down from the sky like a pillar atop a spirit peak that was barely visible from his field of view. The entire spirit peak was covered in a majestic and hazy moonlight that made it give off a divine aura. It's a vision of the heavens. Sure enough, an exotic treasure must have appeared. Someone exclaimed, a look of anticipation and joy in his eyes. Exotic treasures that could give rise to visible phenomena were no trivial things. If any Cloud River Realm cultivator could get their hands on them, then even if they didn't choose to use it themselves, they could trade them for a large amount of resources with other cultivators. The exotic treasure must have some sort of powerful attraction for the spirit beasts. A large number of them gather in that direction every night where the moonlight can be seen, where they slaughter each other, and it seems like it's the same tonight. It's a pity that no one has been able to see just what that exotic treasure is so far. On the contrary, a lot of people have lost their lives over there. When we do decide to act later, we'll have to work together. At the very least, we should find out just what sort of exotic treasure it is. What this fellow cultivator said is very true. Sentence by sentence, their intentions entered Lu Ye's ears. Staring fixedly in the direction of that phenomenon, Lu Yi frowned. Why did it seem so familiar to him? He couldn't help but recall the time when Amber cultivated under the moon with Wuxia during their time in the heavenly derivative sect. Comparatively speaking, what he was seeing now was slightly more magnificent than what he saw that day. Suddenly, Lu Yi had a bad feeling in his heart. With that thought, he quickly sent a message to Wuxia. It wasn't long before he received a response, and after some thought, Lu Yi gave him some instructions. In the next moment, the moon essence poured down onto the peak and the various phenomenons disappeared without a trace. Lu Ye's eyelid twitched. He understood at once that it was just as he suspected. It wasn't the sign of some exotic treasure being born in the world, it was just Wuxia cultivating. For a Cloud River Realm cultivator to have created such a fuss during cultivation, and even attracting so many cultivators to investigate, there was truly nobody who could achieve this but him. Just as Lu Yi was being sardonic, the disappearance of the phenomenon caused the faces of many cultivators to change. Did someone get their hands on it? If it wasn't so, then there was no way that the vision could have disappeared for no reason. At those words, many cultivators became anxious and all rushed towards the spirit peak at once. At the same time, growls could be heard coming from the direction of the spirit peak, accompanied by turbulent spiritual power fluctuations. Under the moonlight, many flying spirit beasts danced in the air while colorful lights bloomed. Before the cultivators could even get close, the spirit beasts over there had already begun fighting due to the disappearance of the phenomenon. For many cultivators, such a scene was not surprising, for the spirit beasts over there would fight chaotically on every moonlit night. Many powerful spirit beasts had already died near the spirit peak. Then, wolf howls could be heard, gradually drowning out the noise of the other beasts. Lu Yi hovered in midair, staring fixedly in the direction of the spirit peak. There were no longer any cultivators that could be seen around him, which was quite a headache. The phenomenon had come about from Wuxia's cultivation, and not only did it attract the attention of many cultivators, it also caused the many spirit beasts gathered there to fight incessantly. It wasn't hard to imagine just how chaotic it was over there. Naturally, Wuxia wasn't in a good situation. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi quickly flew off into that direction. Before he could get close, however, a huge shadow descended from the sky. Along with it, a thunderbolt resembling a swimming dragon struck down. It was a storming thunderhawk that attacked him, and judging by the power of its attack, it was a spirit beast equivalent to the 8th Order Cloud River Realm. Lu Yi would not dare to take on such a ferocious blow and immediately lowered his spirit boat while swerving side by side. However, the thunder chased after him as if it were a living creature. Once he reached the ground, he unsheathed his inviolable saber and slashed at the incoming thunder. The impact of that clash caused Lu Yi to fly backwards as the power of the thunder traveled through his body, causing him to feel numb for a while. After barely stabilizing his feet, the Thunderhawk struck again. Lu Yi raised his hand and launched out several blade lights to interrupt the Thunderhawk while jumping in the other direction. A fishy stench lingered around his nose, and at the same time, a large cloud of smoke rose from the Tree of Glyphs. A strong gust of wind struck from behind. Lu Yi quickly turned to his side to avoid it, where a long but robust figure entered his vision and dashed past him. It was a venomous python that had been lying in ambush. Its intention was to launch a sneak attack on Lu Yi, but he managed to evade it. So, seizing the opportunity, it launched itself towards the Thunderhawk instead. In an instant, two massive spirit beasts were engaged in combat. The hawk's cries and the python's hisses filled the air. After a moment, the Thunderhawk soared high into the sky, its sharp claws piercing the flesh of the venomous python while the snake coiled around its body. Lu Yi was left laying there, watching the scene with cold sweat running down his back. The scene was incredibly messy. Spirit beasts of various species clashed in frenzied battles, joined by other cultivators as well. Everything within a radius of 500 kilometers was overrun by chaos. After walking just 5 kilometers, Lu Yi had already encountered several life-threatening situations. He even witnessed a cultivator whom he suspected to be in the 7th Order Cloud River realm being brutally crushed by the palm of a spirit beast that resembled an upright bear. The scene was gruesome. He couldn't venture any deeper as this place was too perilous. Even 9th Order Cloud River realm cultivators may not have been able to guarantee their safety here. It was no wonder why those cultivators mentioned that it had been many days since the appearance of the exotic treasure, and no one had been able to figure out what it was. If the situation was this brutal when he was still so far from the spirit peak that Wuxia cultivated on, one could only imagine what it would be like closer to the peak. Trying to ascertain the nature of the emerging exotic treasure amidst this chaos was simply as difficult as reaching the heavens. Moreover, the cultivators' plans were destined to fail as there was no actual exotic treasure. There was only Wuxia. Lu Yi was curious about how Wuxia could have survived in this chaotic scene. Didn't the spirit beasts attack him? Even if he had entered the Cloud River battlefield a few months before Lu Yi, and even if he had some surplus strength left in his mutant core, Wuxia's cultivation shouldn't be too high. Upon further reflection, the spirit beasts might not actually attack Wuxia. His cultivation brought about phenomena that benefited the spirit beasts, which explained why so many were gathered here. Pressing his hand on his battlefield imprint, Lu Yi sent a message to Wuxia before quietly retreating towards the periphery. If Wuxia had managed to stay safe for nearly 2 months, he would undoubtedly remain unharmed tonight as well. After dawn, Lu Yi could just ask him to come and meet with him instead. He was just nearby, so Wuxia shouldn't get lost again. Time passed, and the battle of the spirit beasts continued. Most of the cultivators had withdrawn since the vision had ceased. This likely indicated that someone had seized the unknown treasure. In that case, there was no longer a reason for them to take any risks. However, there were still bold cultivators with exceptional courage who sought opportunities amidst the chaos. Normally, it was not easy to kill high-level spirit beasts, but in this situation, there were chances to make some gains without much effort. For example, Lu Yi was staring ahead at this moment, witnessing the wonders of fate. Just a short distance in front of him, a massive figure struggled desperately. It was none other than the storming Thunderhawk that had attacked him before. The Thunderhawk was clearly in bad shape. Due to the venomous python coiling around it, the ground was splattered with beast blood, but the python had gone silent, most likely dead. However, the storming Thunderhawk was not faring much better. Lu Yi could sense its life force rapidly fading, and a faint green aura had enveloped its body. This was clearly a sign of toxicity. Lu Yi never expected that retreating from this direction would lead him to encounter these two spirit beasts again. After observing for a moment to confirm that the storming Thunderhawk was truly on its last legs, Lu Yi drew his saber and stepped forward. His killing intent alerted the struggling eagle. Despite facing imminent death, its sharp gaze exuded a regal aura. Drawing the inviolable from its sheath, Lu Yi advanced with blade in hand, easily dodging the few thunder attacks the size of chopsticks that were launched by the Thunderhawk. Leaping high into the air, he swung his saber downwards. A piercing cry of agony rang out, and the sharp blade cleaved through the eagle's neck, causing a fountain of fresh blood to spew into the sky. Chapter 556. Lu Yi is looking for me? Two spirit beasts in the peak of the Cloud River realm. Lu Yi shouldn't be a match for any of them, but after a gruesome fight, one of them was dead and the other was heavily injured. Lu Yi couldn't help but feel in awe at receiving the heaven's favor. He took out an empty water skin to keep the beast blood in, then quickly extracted the mutant cores of the two spirit beasts. Both mutant cores were large in size. The Thunderhawk's mutant core was covered in threads of thunder energy whilst the venomous python's mutant core presented in an emerald sheen. One could tell at a glance that its toxicity was not low. After all, this was where the essence of these spirit beasts' cultivation was located, and they matched perfectly with their own attributes. He could feed the Thunderhawk's mutant core to Amber, whereas the venomous python's mutant core could be kept away for Wuxia, which she was sure to like. Then, Lu Yi retrieved some other materials that he felt would be worth something, such as the Thunderhawk's claws, beak, and wings. Then, he skinned the venomous python and put everything into his storage sphere before leaving in satisfaction. The flesh of spirit beasts was very nutritious, and body-tempering cultivator would ingest large amounts of it practically every day. That was because that was the only way that they could strengthen their own vitality. So, no matter what, there was no shortage of demand for spirit beast meat. What was more, snake meat was a favorite treat for both Lu Yi and Amber. Ever since trying it for the first time, he had been hooked on the flavor. Now that such a rare opportunity had come about, Lu Yi naturally wouldn't miss it. As he moved away, the noise gradually disappeared behind him. Lu Yi found a secluded place and set up a ward before waiting in rest. Time passed, and the figures of cultivators and spirit beasts would pass him by overhead from time to time, and it wasn't until dawn that the chaos completely subsided. Lu Yi sent out a message to Jianghu, telling him to come and join up with him. On top of the spirit peak, Jianghu's tall figure stood up. Many giant wolves gathered around him in all directions, many of which were staring at him, especially the leader, whose fur was snow-white all around its body and appeared stronger than the rest of its race. It was standing just 10 meters away from Jianghu, looking down at him with its head slightly lowered, its wolf eyes filled with puzzlement. Many of the giant wolves had gotten injured during the bloody battle that went on through the night, and they were now silently licking their own wounds while some of the others dragged the corpses of other spirit beasts over to feast on with their companions, covering their maws with blood as they devoured the meat. The wolf pack was very close-knit. No matter how many other spirit beasts arrived, they would all work together to repel them, and that was the main reason why they were able to dominate this spirit peak in these recent days. At this moment, however, the person they regarded as a sacred figure not only came to life, but it seemed like he was going to leave. How could the wolves accept that? They had been here for less than 2 months and had personally experienced the benefits that this sacred figure had brought to their pack. As a mountain breeze blew past, Jianghu had a helpless expression as he faced the wolves. He had not realized how much excitement was going on around him all this while. After he was jolted by Lu Ye's message last night, the chaos around him left him bewildered. Fortunately, however, he knew then that things were not good, so he didn't dare to move recklessly either and just waited in place. With the protection of the wolf pack, none of the other spirit beasts or the other cultivators could even hope to get close to this spirit peak. Now that he had received Lu Ye's message, who was nearby, it was time to meet up with him. However, the pack leader seemed unwilling to let him go. Even without direct communication, Jianghu could sense what it was thinking. They looked at each other for a long time before Jianghu squeezed out in a sullen voice, "Lu Yi is looking for me." The pack leader cocked its head to the side, looking as if it did not understand him. Even if its abilities were equivalent to the 9th Order Cloud River realm, and even if it gained some semblance of human intelligence, these spirit beasts resided deep inside the mountain forests, so how could they understand the language of humans? Thus began Jianghu's mission. He walked forward and pushed the pack leader with his hands. "Don't block the way." With a casual shove, he pushed the pack leader, which was even larger than him, a few steps back. Passing by the pack leader, Zhu Jia walked straight ahead. The giant wolves around, whether they were recuperating or feasting on meat, all rose to their feet, feeling at a loss as they watched the tall figure departing. The sacred figure of their pack was going to leave? How could this happen? A wolf howl rang out, and the pack leader stepped forward to catch up with Zhu Jia. It lowered its head and gently nudged his back, lifting him up. Zhu Jia soared into the air, and as he descended, he landed on the pack leader's back, all steady and secure. Stopping the sacred figure from leaving seemed unfeasible. In that case, they would just follow him. Understanding the pack leader's intentions, Zhu Jia didn't refuse but pointed in a direction instead. That way. The pack leader picked up its pace, maneuvering nimbly through the mountain forest. Behind it, a large group of giant wolves followed in an impressive formation, causing the earth to shake as they passed. Less than a dozen kilometers away, where Lu Yi was hiding. He had released Amber from the spirit beast bag while he was lurking nearby, vigilant. After an incense stick of time, Lu Yi suddenly sensed something unusual. He quickly pressed his hand onto the ground, then his brows furrowed. He could sense movement in the ground as if many spirit beasts were galloping about, and the magnitude of the sensations indicated that there were a great number of them. Moreover, judging by the vibrations, they appeared to be getting closer. This was a dangerous place, and staying any longer wouldn't be wise. Right at that moment, a message came to his battlefield imprint. When Lu Yi checked it, he found it to be a transmission from Lu Yi. Zhu Jia brought a lot of giant wolves with him. For a moment, Lu Yi could not process what was being said in the message. What does she mean, Zhu Jia brought a lot of giant wolves with him? As he was going to ask for an explanation, the sight of a snow-white figure dashing over entered his field of vision. And on the back of that figure was a second large figure. Lu Yi was slightly dazed as he watched the tall figure. Amber, who was perched on his shoulder, widened its eyes and stared at the scene in astonishment. After a while, the snow-white figure stopped about 30 meters away from Lu Yi, staring calmly at him with its wolf eyes as its soft fur swayed in the wind. Behind the figure were more than 100 giant wolves that were following it closely. Lu Yi finally understood what Yi's message meant. Zhu Jia really did bring many giant wolves with him. What was going on here? Lu Yi was caught off guard for a moment. Zhu Jia was only a body-tempering cultivator and he had never heard that he possessed beast-taming abilities, so how could he associate with so many giant wolves? Moreover, from what he was seeing, it seemed like this entire pack of wolves was under his command. He couldn't help but recall the events last night, and he did hear the successive wolf howls. Now that he thought about it, the howls must have come from this wolf pack. However, it was the strength of this wolf pack that surprised him even more. The one that he suspected to be the leader, the one that Zhu Jia rode, was undoubtedly comparable in strength to a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. The rest of the wolves were also emitting a ferocious aura. A minority of them were lower than the 4th or 5th order, while many were in the 8th or the 9th order. It was simply hard to imagine just how powerful such a pack of wolves could be in battle. After more than half a year of not seeing each other, Zhu Jia seemed visibly delighted to be reunited with him again. Even his usually stiff face showed a hint of a smile. He leapt down from the back of the wolf and went over to Lu Yi in a large stride. As he drew closer, his shadow cast over Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked up at the tall figure and was surprised to find that Zhu Jia had grown even taller again. His plain clothing could not hide his physique, and his exposed skin had a bronze-like luster as if it were forged from refined iron. Zhu Jia lifted his large hand and patted Lu Yi on the shoulder, squeezing him down a bit. Lu Yi grinned, not saying a word, just expressing joy towards their long-awaited reunion. Amber leapt from Lu Yi's shoulder and landed on Zhu Jia's head, settling down on it with practiced ease. In the midst of the wilderness, two figures stood facing each other, one tall and one short. Behind the towering figure stood more than 100 giant snow-white wolves that were waiting silently, creating an inexplicably strange scene. Lu Yi tilted his body to look past Zhu Jia at the wolves, then he lowered his voice and asked, "What's going on?" For now, the wolves seemed to have been brought here by Zhu Jia, and they had not shown any malice to neither him nor Zhu Jia thus far. However, Lu Yi was still cautious. He had only been parted with him for half a year, so how had Zhu Jia managed to subdue such a wolf pack? They followed me, Zhu Jia answered with a helpless expression. Why? Zhu Jia shook his head, indicating that he did not know the answer. He was simply waiting for Lu Yi on the spirit peak, then in the blink of an eye, he woke up to find himself surrounded by a large pack of wolves just a few days ago. Now that he wanted to leave, the wolf pack ended up following him. Even he himself could not figure out why the wolves were insistent on following him. Seeing that he wasn't going to get an answer out of him, Lu Yi gave up. Then come with me. I've already made arrangements with 4th senior brother and senior sister Feng. Let's go meet them now. Zhu Jia agreed without objection. Lu Yi summoned his spirit boat with a raise of his hand and called out to who was lurking nearby, and she immediately revealed herself. After exchanging greetings with Zhu Jia, he leapt onto the spirit boat. Zhu Jia also stepped onto the spirit boat. However, just as they were about to leave, the snow-white figure charged forward like a gust of wind and rammed against the spirit boat, sending it tumbling in the air while Lu Yi and the others were forced to land in a pitiful fall. Drawing his saber, Lu Yi watched the pack leader cautiously as it stood just a short distance away. Soon, however, he sheathed his blade. Though the pack leader had knocked over his spirit boat, it didn't exhibit any strong hostility towards them. It seemed that it simply wanted to prevent them from leaving. He wasn't the target of its obstruction, however, Zhu Jia was. The pack leader seemed reluctant to see Zhu Jia leave. Based on last night's events and the situation they were in now, Lu Yi formed a conjecture in his mind. The anomaly brought about by Zhu Jia's cultivation attracted many spirit beasts to gather around him, indicating that the anomaly was of great benefit to them. If the wolf pack wanted Zhu Jia to stay due to this, then everything would make sense. After a brief contemplation, Lu Yi said, try to communicate with them and ask them what they want. Yi nodded. Yes. Yi herself didn't have the ability to communicate directly with the beasts, but it was possible with Amber's assistance. Amber jumped down from Zhu Jia's head and with a shake of its body, its spirit energy churned, and it transformed into its true form. With an imposing presence, it approached the pack leader. What happened next was a sight that Lu Yi found hard to comprehend. Amber and the pack leader exchanged roars and howls, communicating almost for as long as it took for an incense stick to burn. Only then did Amber turn around and walk back to them. Standing by Lu Ye's side, Yi sensed Amber's thoughts and understood. They don't want Zhu Jia to leave. They want him to stay, and the pack leader even said that Zhu Jia was their sacred figure. Chapter 557, Ameliorate Valley. Their sacred figure? Lu Yi frowned. That's what it means, but it can also be understood as a totem. Yi continued to explain, they have been by Zhu Jia's side for a long time, and Zhu Jia can help their pack increase their strength, so they will not let Zhu Jia leave. The pack leader even said that we can go, and they won't stop us from doing so. Lu Yi came here to take Zhu Jia with him to join up with 4th senior brother and Feng Yukan. If he didn't take Zhu Jia with him, then what was the point of him coming here? Naturally, they could leave by force. With his and Zhu Jia's current level of cultivation, even without flight-type artifacts, they could still fly. It didn't seem like these mutant wolves had any flight abilities, so they wouldn't be able to catch up with them. However, the spirit beast's strength had reached such a level that even if they didn't have the means to fly, they would still be able to attack any enemies in the air. If they did anything rash and provoked them here, then they may not be able to get out of it unscathed. This was a difficult situation. Seemingly sensing Lu Ye's thoughts, the pack leader suddenly let out a howl, to which Amber roared back in response lest it be seen as weak. In the next instant, the spirit essence on the bodies of the hundreds of giant wolves began to churn, and a chilling killing intent spread out in all directions. Lu Yi immediately felt his skin tingling, and he raised his hand to his blade's hilt. During this moment of tension, Zhu Jia suddenly raised his fan-like palm and slapped the head of the pack leader, causing it to stumble. Stand down. The pack leader shook its head, and the fierceness in its eyes quickly dissipated. The hundreds of ferocious wolves also quickly went dormant, becoming harmless. Lu Yi clicked his tongue in wonder at the sight. Just from the current situation before him, he could tell that Wuxia held an unrivaled position in the hearts of these wolves. Even the leader did not show any fuss when it was beaten on the head, which was not how a spirit beast was supposed to react. It was true that Wuxia lacked the ability to tame beasts, nor had he controlled these mutant wolves before, but the benefits he had brought to the wolves during this period of time had given him the qualifications to control the entire pack. The pack leader glanced at Wuxia, then at Lu Yi before letting out a few soft yips. He immediately translated, "It says we can leave, but we have to bring them since they want to follow Wuxia. Wherever Wuxia goes is wherever they will go." Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at that. How did they end up bargaining with these wolves? He never thought that such a big person like Wuxia would have a pack of spirit beasts clinging to him. This kind of thing was most likely unheard of in the Cloud River battlefield, not even in the ancient times. If the Beastmasters were to see what was happening here, then they would definitely see Wuxia as some sort of deity. However, it was obviously unrealistic to bring along such a large pack of mutant wolves with them. Spirit beasts were of great value to cultivators, and bringing them away from here would only lead to a lot of trouble. If they didn't bring the wolves with them, however, then they wouldn't let Wuxia leave. Following Wuxia was their greatest concession. If they were forced to leave, then the wolves wouldn't attack Wuxia, only him. Even though the pack leader looked like a docile and gentle creature in front of Wuxia, it was only to him alone. Lu Yi frowned. This really was a difficult situation. Should they leave Wuxia behind? With such a strong pack of wolves protecting him, then Wuxia shouldn't be met with any great dangers. He could even live like a fish in water inside the Grand Wild's peak. However, the anomaly generated by Wuxia's cultivation was a problem. It had already attracted so many cultivators to come and investigate last time, and even a large number of spirit beasts have gathered around. Even if he had survived without issue for so many days, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't encounter any accidents at any time. In the midst of these thoughts, Lu Yi suddenly thought of a solution. The reason why he wanted to take Wuxia with him was so that he could bring him along to meet up with 4th senior brother and Feng Yuechan. Then they were going to look for a suitable area to set up a Primus-level arcane glade. They were the ones in charge of finding a spot for the arcane glade, but they never sent any news back after so many days had passed, so it was clear that they were still in search of a suitable location. It wasn't easy to find a suitable place for an arcane glade. First of all, it had to have some degree of seclusion, and secondly, there had to be a sufficient geographical advantage. Doesn't the Grand Wild's peak seem like a good choice? This was a dangerous place with a high concentration of powerful spirit beasts. Even though many cultivators came here to hunt these beasts, they never ventured too deeply into it. So, as long as the location was deep enough, they could reduce the risk of being discovered by other cultivators. And this wolf pack following Wuxia around were like the natural protectors of the arcane glade. With such a huge force, even if they went deeper into the Grand Wild's peak, they would still have sufficient power to deal with most crises. So, they might not need to take Wuxia away from here. Situating the arcane glade deep inside the Grand Wild's peak seemed to be a good choice. At that thought, Lu Ye's mind suddenly opened up as if he saw the light at the end of a tunnel. Looking up now, the large wolves the size of calves became much more pleasant to look at too. Of course, this was only if the wolves were loyal to Wuxia. If there wasn't enough loyalty in place, then no one would feel safe around such a powerful pack. However, judging from the current situation, loyalty didn't seem to be a problem. After all, they had to improve the strength of the pack through Wuxia's cultivation. Amber, tell it to lead us to a safe and quiet place. Amber then growled at the wolf pack, who responded from time to time. Then, it looked up at Lu Yi with a human look in its wolf eyes. A short while later, the pack leader turned around, lowered its head, and nudged Wuxia onto its back before taking off, heading deep inside the woods at a brisk pace. Hundreds of giant wolves followed. Lu Yi also got on the tiger's back, and with a few quick steps, Amber caught up with the pack leader and ran alongside it. As they moved deeper and deeper into the Grand Wild's peak, Lu Yi took out his 10-point map to check their whereabouts. Currently, they were already in a considerably deep part of the Grand Wild's peak, and the spirit beasts that would generally appear here wouldn't be too weak. Usually, if a cultivator passed through here, it would definitely be unsafe for them as there may be hidden spirit beasts coming out to attack them at any time. However, no spirit beasts dared to challenge the wolf pack. Louis even saw a spirit beast with a strong aura avoiding the trajectory of the wolves. It was only after the pack left that the spirit beast let out a few roars as if to vent its frustration at the wolves' intrusion into its territory. Half a day later, the wolf pack stopped at a valley. It was a picturesque mountain valley where colorful flowers grew and birdsong played in their surroundings. The valley was large and was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. On one side was a cliff with a sweeping waterfall running down from it, the rumbling of the crashing water incessant. Looking up at it, the sunlight refracted into a colorful haze as it illuminated the splashing water. Under the waterfall was a river, besides which many wild beasts drank. "It's beautiful." He gazed at the waterfall and the rainbow from atop Amber's head. Few people knew that such a paradise existed amidst the dangers of the Grand Wilds Peak. Upon checking the 10-point map, Lu Yi found that their location was labeled as Ameliorate Valley. He flew around the valley with his flight-type artifact, but he didn't see any traces of spirit beasts about. This was a good location. Not only was the scenery beautiful and the environment pleasant, there were still natural barriers in place. So, if Zhu Jia were to cultivate again in the future, then even if the phenomena were to reappear, it could easily be covered by the mountains around the valley, and it wouldn't draw such a spectacle as before. Lu Yi, he called out to him. "Let's set up the arcane glade here, shall we?" Clearly, she also had the same idea. Lu Yi nodded. "I'll contact 4th Senior Brother." Tapping his hand on his battlefield imprint, he sent out a message. "4th Senior Brother, any ideas on the arcane glade's location yet?" Li Baxian soon responded saying, "Don't worry, little junior brother. We're still looking. I have a suitable place here." "Oh, little junior brother found one? Where is it located?" "Grand Wilds Peak, Ameliorate Valley." He waited a while but there was no response from Li Baxian, though he figured that he was probably checking his 10-point map for Ameliorate Valley's exact location. It wasn't until a while later that Li Baxian responded. "Little junior brother, this location is too deep inside Grand Wilds Peak. It's not safe there. If we place our arcane glade there, it will reduce our chance of being exposed to cultivators, but the spirit beasts there are not to be messed with. The situation is a bit complicated. Senior brother and senior sister Feng should come and convene with me first. You'll understand then." "Very well." Li Baxian didn't ask too many questions about it. Since Lu Yi asked them to convene with him, he immediately set off with Feng Yuechan in their direction. After ending the transmission, he asked, "What did 4th Senior Brother say?" "They're on the way, but it'll take a few days. We can take this time to familiarize ourselves with our surroundings and explore to see whether or not this is a suitable location for the arcane glade." With a decision made, Lu Yi immediately took action. Even though he had circled around the valley earlier and didn't find anything special, it was still best to err on the side of caution. After all, spirit beasts were naturally good at hiding, and this kind of innate ability was even more powerful than the hiding abilities of any ghost cultivator. Zhu Jia was also looking around alongside him. It was worth mentioning that the wolves were still following him wherever he went, especially the pack leader, whose eyes never left Zhu Jia's side, as if afraid that he would run away. Almost half a day later, Lu Yi had already checked the area within 50 kilometers of the valley and confirmed that there was no danger here save for a few wild beasts, and there were no signs of other powerful spirit beasts either. As night fell, a round moon hung in the sky. The wolves gathered around Zhu Jia, watching him intently, clearly waiting to cultivate with him. However, Zhu Jia had no mind to cultivate and was sitting around a campfire with Lu Yi, gulping as he watched the snake meat roasting over the fire. He had been living a hard life out in the wilderness by himself since parting ways with Lu Yi, especially in the last 2 months which he spent in a state of stillness. It had been a long time since he'd had a full stomach. Amber was next to them, chewing on meat in large bites. It wasn't long until the large cut of snake meat entered its belly, but it was still not enough to satisfy it. It ran over to Lu Yi and nudged him with its large head, prompting Lu Yi to bring out another cut of snake meat. Soon, the snake meat was done cooking. Lu Yi and Zhu Jia shared the food together, and despite the great difference in their body size, they weren't much different when it came to consuming food. They had even crunched the bones and gulped them all down into their stomachs. Chapter 558 Reliability. After they ate their fill, Lu Yi took out some materials from his storage sphere and circulated his spiritual power, refining them into ward flags. Since the Carnage Colosseum, he had few ward flags left that he could use, and if he were going to be setting up wards in the Arcane Glade, then he would definitely need a large number of these flags, so he refined some first just in case. Zhu Jia was just sitting quietly at first, savoring the delicious roasted snake meat, but as time passed, he gradually closed his eyes and entered into that same state of stillness again. His breath grew almost still, and even his vitality and his aura were reduced to an extreme state as if he were a dead man. A milky white light formed around his burly figure that induced the moon's essence to pour down, and all of a sudden, half of the valley was bathed in the hazy and majestic moon essence. The wolves gathered around Zhu Jia and tilted their heads up, greedily devouring the moon essence that descended from the sky. Even Amber, who was perched on Zhu Jia's head, took on the same posture as the wolves. Lu Yi stopped what he was doing and just watched the scene silently. He wasn't sure why such a phenomenon was triggered whenever Zhu Jia cultivated, but for one, he believed that the phenomenon brought great benefits to the spirit beasts. Otherwise, the wolves wouldn't keep on clinging to Zhu Jia. Amber had cultivated with Zhu Jia before, and it did benefit it as well. Rumor had it that spirit beasts had the ability to swallow the essence of both the sun and the moon to cultivate themselves, but spirit beasts wouldn't generally cause such a commotion when they cultivated. Zhu Jia was the only one that had this peculiarity. After some thought, Lu Yi decided to collect his mind and tried to cultivate as well. But soon, he gave up on the idea as it didn't seem to have any special effect on him. The moon essence that he bathed in certainly warmed him up, but it didn't have any effect on his strength. The situation was the same for Yi. So, he concluded that this kind of cultivation was only suited for spirit beasts. Zhu Jia was undoubtedly an outlier in this case. Calling Yi, Lu Yi stood up and summoned his spirit boat, heading up into the sky. He wanted to see how visible the phenomenon formed by Zhu Jia's cultivation truly was. Even though the valley was surrounded by mountains on all sides, which could cover the visibility of the anomaly to a great extent, there was still a risk of exposure if the scope was too great. If that were the case, then the spirit beasts inside of the Grand Wild's peak would surely gather, adding a lot of trouble to their plates. And if the cultivators were also lured over here, then this place would not be suitable for the Arcane Glade. A quick inspection revealed that the situation was not that bad. The phenomenon was mostly concealed by the valley, so unless one was close enough, it wouldn't be easily detected. Once he returned, he could set up a special concealment ward for Zhu Jia, then there shouldn't be too much of a problem left. After returning to his spot, Lu Yi continued refining more ward flags. When the sun came up, he, Zhu Jia, and Yi worked together to build places for them to live. Since they decided to set up the Arcane Glade here, then they naturally couldn't go without homes to live in. Even if cultivators did not have high requirements for their place of residence, it was still necessary to have a place where they could be protected from the wind and rain. It didn't take much to build a few wooden huts. As the days passed, a few huts were erected in the picturesque mountain valley. In terms of wards, Lu Yi had only set up a concealment ward to cover the phenomenon that arose from Zhu Jian nightly cultivation, but he had not set anything up beyond that. Everything would have to wait until Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan arrived and confirmed that the Arcane Glade would be created here. On this day, Lu Yi was refining ward flags when he suddenly had a feeling in his heart, and he looked up in a direction. There, two streams of light entered his vision, quickly making their way over. Once he focused his vision and confirmed who the two streams of light were, Lu Yi rose up to greet them. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan had arrived. Upon seeing Lu Yi, the two of them immediately flew over to him, and soon, they were face to face. Lu Yi saluted, "Fourth senior brother, senior sister Feng." Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan both looked travel-worn and in a bit of a messy state. Even though both of them were already in the fifth-order Cloud River realm, they still encountered some difficulties along the way. There were far too many spirit beasts lurking around in the Grand Wilds Peak. So, no matter which direction they came from, they would inevitably meet with some trouble. If it weren't for the many treasures that Feng Yuechan carried, then it would have been impossible for them to have come this deep into the mountain range with just their level of cultivation. Even so, the two of them were targeted by a powerful spirit beast, and it took a lot of effort for them to get out of that situation. Now that he saw Lu Yi, Li Baxian finally breathed a sigh of relief. Little junior brother, this place really wasn't easy to get to. However, it was exactly for that reason that this place was well hidden. Feng Yuechan had already been captivated by the picturesque scenery and was looking around. Upon seeing the many huge wolf mutants scattered around the valley, she couldn't help but wince and tugged on Li Baxian's sleeve, pointing to the front. "Senior brother, look." When Li Baxian looked up, even his expression changed slightly, and he looked at Lu Yi with uncertainty. "What's going on here?" So many wolf mutants were gathered here that it was clear they were a pack. However, what he couldn't understand was why his little junior brother seemed to be living in peace with this pack of wolf mutants. "It's a long story." Lu Yi called over Zhu Jia, who was hanging around the side, and introduced them. Zhu Jia gave a silent bow as his greeting to Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan. Feng Yuechan had to crane her head up to look at Zhu Jia, who was at least 2 to 3 heads taller than her. Even though she had seen many large body tempering cultivators before, she couldn't help but think of 2 words upon seeing this man. Naturally gifted. Zhu Jia's size alone gave off an oppressive aura, and it was hard to imagine just what kind of terrifying strength was hidden in such a tower-like figure. Li Baxian had seen Zhu Jia from a distance before, but had never met him face to face. Moreover, Zhu Jia's cultivation level was much lower than his then. Now that he got the chance to meet him again, he gave off a very different feeling to him. Even without fighting him, Li Baxian could judge at a glance that this junior brother Zhu Jia was not an easy one to deal with. The wolf pack was brought here by Zhu Jia. He creates an anomaly when he cultivates, and it benefits the wolves, so they began regarding Zhu Jia as a sacred figure of theirs, and you can say they have a dependent relationship with Zhu Jia. Lu Yi gave them a brief explanation. Dependent? Li Baxian clicked his tongue in wonder at what he heard, then he snapped to his senses. "Is this the complicated situation that you mentioned earlier?" Lu Yi nodded. Li Baxian didn't know what to say. Not only was this a complicated situation, it was simply unheard of. It was unimaginable that a pack of mutant wolves like these would choose to become dependent on a cultivator. "Do you think it's safe?" Li Baxian asked. "For now, it seems so. The wolves haven't expressed any sort of hostility towards me in the past few days. They just want to cultivate with Zhu Jia." "So, what's that anomaly you were talking about? And why would it make the wolves follow junior brother Zhu Jia?" You'll find out by nightfall. It's a type of anomaly that has a strong attraction to spirit beasts. Many cultivators saw it before and thought that an exotic treasure had been born, which caused quite a commotion." Li Baxian pressed down the doubts in his heart and nodded. Then he looked around at his surroundings before commenting, "This place is deep within the Grand Wilds Peak, so it's an excellent location, and the scenery is great. With a natural barrier, if this wolf pack can be relied upon, then this is indeed a suitable location for an arcane glade. Little junior brother has good eyes." Lu Yi shook his head. "It was the wolves who brought me here." He raised his hand and pointed at the largest wolf mutant. "That's the pack leader. Generally, it's the one we talk to when we have any issues." "Oh." Li Baxian looked in the direction that Lu Yi was pointing to and saw the wolf looking their way. It had a curious look in its eyes, as if it couldn't understand why 2 more humans had come. However, in the wolf's mind, as long as their pack's sacred figure didn't go away, then it didn't matter if more humans came. So, the wolf only looked at them for a moment before resting on the ground, no longer paying attention to their side. "Do you think this is a suitable place for the arcane glade, senior brother?" Lu Yi asked. "If we can trust the wolves, then it's suitable," Li Baxian answered. The only problem they may have to face by placing their arcane glade here was whether spirit beasts would come to disturb them. Moreover, Any spirit beast that appeared in such a place would certainly not be too weak. If the wolves could be relied upon, then they would serve as a natural deterrent, so not many spirit beasts would dare to come lest they bring misfortune upon themselves. I'm curious to know just how strong that pack leader is, and also what is the general strength of the pack? Li Baxian asked cautiously. I've been observing them for the past few days, and the pack leader has strength equivalent to the 9th Order Cloud River realm, but the strength of the pack is mixed. There are those in the 8th or 9th Order, but also those in the 1st or 2nd Order. Most of them are above the 5th Order, whereas those below that only take up 30% of the pack. Lu Yi went on, I know what senior brother is worried about, and I was considering the same question myself. However, based on my observations through the past few days, the wolves have shown no intentions other than a strong reliance on following Wuxia to cultivate. What about junior brother Wuxia? Li Baxian then asked. Wuxia is in the 4th Order. His cultivation level was the same as Lu Ye's current level. He entered the Cloud River battlefield several months before Lu Yi, but there was still energy left in the mutant core in Wuxia's body when he broke through into the Cloud River realm, so he had some foundation in his cultivation upon his advancement. The reason Lu Yi could advance so quickly in his cultivation was thanks to the number of amulets he had amassed, but Wuxia was different. His gains in his cultivation came through bitter cultivation that he obtained while in that state of dormancy. Lu Yi had known as early as in the Spirit Creek battlefield that Wuxia was very tolerant of loneliness. Apart from cultivating, his greatest pleasure in life was generally to eat with Lu Yi. Other than that, there was nothing else that could arouse his interest. Lu Yi had met so many people, and there was none that lived a life as pure as Wuxia. And it was precisely because of that purity that even through grueling cultivation, he could advance so quickly. Not to mention, Wuxia's method of cultivation was more special than anyone else. Senior brother, are you thinking that Wuxia isn't strong enough to suppress the wolves? Lu Yi could see the concern that Li Baxian was having. Li Baxian nodded. Spirit beasts are simply spirit beasts after all. They're wild and undomesticated, so it's difficult to subdue them without sufficient strength. It was only natural for him to be worried. If one day, the wolves suddenly erupted and attacked them, then none of them would get away unscathed. However, there was no guarantee that that would happen. While the two of them were talking here, Wuxia, who stood idly by the side, suddenly raised his head and made a strange sound towards the location of the wolves. It sounded deep like the howl of a wolf, but not exactly. The pack leader that was lying at that side immediately got up and ran over to Wuxia's side, then looked up at him with inquiring eyes. Peng peng. Wuxia raised his hand and slapped it on the head several times. Both Lu Yi and Li Baxian's eyes twitched at that. Chapter 559, Primus Level Arcane Glade. The pack leader was a third taller than Wuxia, and even if it didn't show any ferocity, just its presence with its cultivation level equivalent to the 9th Order Cloud River realm was enough to make any cultivator's heart palpitate with anxiety. However, such a powerful and imposing spirit beast had just been slapped by Wuxia loud enough to create audible noise. Just from the sound alone, one could tell that his slap could not have been light. After that, Wuxia waved his hand. The pack leader shook its head and silently plodded back to its original spot, then laid back down again as if nothing happened. The corner of Li Baxian's eye twitched. Little junior brother, I have no more questions. Let's place the arcane glade here. Lu Yi nodded. I agree. All their worries were solved. Despite Wuxia treating the pack leader in such a way, it still did not reveal any of its beastly nature, which obviously meant that it really meant no harm to them. So, the placement of the arcane glade was decided upon. Several huts had already been built, and the wisp of sanctification naturally had to be placed at the center of these huts so that all of them could share rain and dew evenly. Lu Yi led Li Baxian and the others to a suitable location before bringing out his spirit beast bag and taking the fat, white Primus-level wisp of sanctification out of it. Senior brother, how do we do it? Lu Yi looked at Li Baxian. He knew only that a Primus-level wisp of sanctification could be used to create a Primus-level arcane glade, but Lu Yi wasn't sure just how exactly it was done. Just put it down, Li Baxin explained. So, Lu Yi put the wisp of sanctification down on the ground in front of him. All eyes were on the fat and white wisp of sanctification, watching as it curled up its body then stretched open again before rolling into the ground, which looked rather comical. Seemingly curious as to why Zhu Jia was so absorbed in watching the wisp, several wolves also stuck their heads over to watch, all of which were slapped away by Zhu Jia with a palm each. The wisp of sanctification's movements might have seemed clumsy, but it was in fact highly efficient. In just a few moments, a hole had been dug out of the ground that led deep underground. Everyone waited in silence. It wasn't until about an hour later that cloudy spring water suddenly emerged from the ground, rising several meters into the sky, which shocked Amber, who was in the middle of investigating the hole. The spring water soon ran clear and gurgled out, gradually forming a small stream on the ground, and its emergence was followed by extremely rich and pure world spiritual qi. Just from a quick sampling of it, Lu Yi could tell that it was worthy of its name as a Primus-level spirit spout. As the water came out of the ground, the world spirit qi that filled the air was even denser than that which emerged in a tertiary-level arcane glade. Moreover, this was just the beginning. Once the arcane glade stabilized completely, the world spiritual qi would only become richer. "Senior brother, there's something that I can't understand," Lu Yi suddenly said. "What is it?" "They say that as long as one possesses a wisp of sanctification, then one can create an arcane glade of the equivalent level, but world spiritual qi cannot come from nowhere. Where does the spiritual qi that is pouring out of the ground alongside the spirit spout come from? It can't have come from the wisp of sanctification." Li Baxin explained, "I've thought about this question myself, and I've also asked some people. In short, there are two known theories. One is that an enormous amount of rich world spiritual qi exists deep underneath the Cloud River battlefield, and the wisp of sanctification has opened up a spirit spout, which spring water gushes out of, thus leading up the world spiritual qi that had been hidden deep underneath the ground." Lu Yi pondered for a while and shook his head. "This doesn't sound right." "Why do you say that?" "You see, senior brother, if that truly were the case, then the world spiritual qi that exists under the ground should be of a fixed quality. However, if we use a Primus-level wisp of sanctification here, then what we get would be a Primus-level arcane glade. And, if we were to use a tertiary-level wisp of sanctification here, then it would be a tertiary-level arcane glade instead, and there's no way to explain that phenomenon." Li Baxin nodded. "Indeed. If the world spiritual qi underneath the ground is fixed, then it shouldn't matter what quality of wisp of sanctification is used. The resulting arcane glade should be the same." "What is the second theory?" "That the wisp of sanctification is only a catalyst, and the spirit spout is only the external manifestation. There's no world spiritual qi hidden in the ground either, just a gift bestowed by the heavens. In other words, as we make use of the Primus-level wisp of sanctification, it is like opening a channel with the heavens, a channel that can transfer over the corresponding grade of world spiritual qi according to the level of the arcane glade. So, as long as there exists a wisp of sanctification, it doesn't matter where it's placed and an arcane glade of equivalent level can be created. That's quite a novel theory. However, it does explain a lot of the questions." Pondering for a moment, that does seem to be the case indeed. If it was based on this theory, then all the doubts he had in his heart could be explained. The spirit spout had already been born, and the accumulation of world spiritual qi in the arcane glade still required a few days before it could stabilize, which was a good time for Lu Yi to set up the wards. He refined a large number of ward flags a few days ago, and now they can finally be put to use. Yi and Feng Yuechan, on the other hand, were in charge of furnishing the wooden huts. For a long time to come, they were going to be living here, and having a more comfortable living environment would naturally bring up one's mood. Li Baxin and Zhu Jia tried to help, but very soon, the two of them were blasted out of the huts. Looking at each other, Li Baxin could only go and look for Lu Yi instead and help him. As for Zhu Jia, he just sat down next to the spirit spout and cultivated in peace. As night fell, the fire was rekindled. The moon hung high in the sky, and the picturesque valley was filled with joyous laughter and the aroma of delicious wine and meat. In the second half of the night, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan finally saw the anomaly resulting from Zhujia's cultivation, and they were both astonished. Especially when the entire wolf pack would resonate with him as he cultivated, swallowing the moon's essence. The scene was spectacular. Fortunately, Lu Yi had set up a concealment ward beforehand, so even though a magnificent phenomenon was produced, as long as one wasn't too close, then one shouldn't be able to detect it, whether they be man or spirit beast. A few days later, Lu Yi had set up large numbers of wards around the entire arcane glade, and the world's spiritual qi inside of it also stabilized completely. Compared to the tertiary-level arcane glade that he and Kitishan occupied before, the cultivation environment in the Primus-level arcane glade was 10 times more favorable than that. The pure world spiritual qi had almost turned into a mist that enveloped the entirety of the arcane glade. So, even without actively cultivating, one needed only to live in this place and their cultivation level would rise continuously. All of them deeply felt just how much a Primus-level arcane glade could provide to a cultivator, and it was no wonder why the cultivators of the Cloud River realm were so eager to occupy such a place. With an arcane glade like this, the growth of a cultivator in the Cloud River realm could be shortened by at least half. Through the past few days, Yi and Amber had both broken through, reaching the third-order Cloud River realm. They were just short of it before, and now with the accumulation of their cultivation through the past few days, they naturally gained enough to allow them to make a breakthrough. After the first few days of excitement and novelty were over, their days gradually returned to normal. That was how a cultivator's life was like, always focusing on the pursuit of realm enhancement. Amongst the few, the one who cultivated the hardest was undoubtedly Zhujia. During the day, he cultivated in his hut by breathing in the world's spiritual qi, but as a moonlit night fell, he would leave his abode and cultivate outside. If there was no moonlight for a few days, then he could stay inside his hut for many days at a time. Lu Yi had also given him a piece of dragon scale. The vitality contained within a dragon scale was extremely useful for a body-tempering cultivator like Zhujia. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan also cherished their new cultivation environment very much, and all of them were working hard to improve their strength. In contrast to them, Lu Yi was the one who had the most time on his hands. He never needed to put too much effort in cultivating. With hundreds of spirit-gathering funnels all over his body, he needed only to be inside of the arcane glade and world spiritual qi would seep into his body incessantly. Then, by consuming some spirit pills every so often, the volume of the river of spiritual power within his body would grow day by day. While cultivating, he would always spend that time reading books. The books he brought from Lady Yun and the blade technique insights that he got from the raving bladesmen were his chosen reading materials that he used to pass the time. Perhaps due to how he was the most idle one, Lu Yi had been getting along quite well with the wolf pack during this period of time. A few of them had even become quite familiar with him and would occasionally squeeze their heads over to join him whenever Lu Yi was reading a book. A batch of wolf mutants would leave every few days to hunt due to a spirit beast's instinct to survive. After getting to know the wolf mutants, Lu Yi also gained some spirit beast meat from them whenever they came back from their hunt. Other than reading books and practicing his blade techniques daily, Lu Yi spent most of his time practicing tattoos on himself. These days, his mastery in the way of tattoos had increased again, but so far he had only been able to practice on himself as there were no suitable subjects for him to work on. One day, as he was practicing on his own body, a large head suddenly pushed its way over and looked on in curiosity. Lu Yi raised his head to meet the gaze of the pair of wolf eyes. This was one of the wolf mutants that he had grown closer to recently, and there was a patch of blue fur on its forehead that looked like a blooming blue flower. Four eyes met, but Lu Yi ignored it and continued focusing on practicing his tattooing. But soon, his hands stopped, and he looked up again at the wolf mutant before him. A thought passed through his mind. This seems like a good target to practice the way of tattoos on. He hadn't thought about it before, mainly because in order to create a tattoo on a spirit beast's body, it was inevitable to have enough trust with one beforehand. Otherwise, Lu Yi could very well be attacked by the spirit beast while pricking them with a needle, and the loss would outweigh the gains then. However, now that they were acquainted with each other, maybe he could give it a try? With that thought in mind, Lu Yi quickly called out to someone. Amber. Amber, who was lounging lazily in the sun not far away, quickly got up and came over, leaping onto Lu Ye's shoulder. Lu Yi raised his hand and constructed glyph, sharp edge on his palm. In a flash, a light bloomed over his entire palm. The wolf mutant took a step back, clearly sensing the sharpness of the aura. Ask it, does it wish to possess such an ability? Amber immediately understood Lu Ye's intentions and began conversing with the wolf mutant before it. The wolf mutant glanced over at Lu Ye's palm from time to time with a clear look of temptation in its wolf eyes. Tell it that I just need to prick its skin a few times with a needle, and it would gain that ability. It can make its claws even sharper. Lu Yi struck while the iron was hot. Amber continued relaying Lu Ye's words. As expected, the wolf mutant was tempted by the offer. It stepped forward and lowered its head, showing submission to Lu Yi to do whatever he wanted. Chapter 560-2? Practicing on the wolf mutant was also simply a whim from Lu Yi. He thought it would take some persuading, but he never expected it to be so cooperative with him. However, creating a tattoo required specific materials, and different tattoos required different materials which must all be meticulously chosen. The materials generally consisted of a mixture of beast blood and medicinal fluids, and each tattoo artist prepared their own blend of the mixture in different proportions, their own exclusive formula. Lu Yi had access to various tattoo formulas, naturally from Lady Yun, and they were all of excellent quality. However, the storm shade and venomous python blood he collected previously were not suitable for tattooing sharp edge, and it would be impractical to go out and buy or collect more at this time. After some thought, Lu Yi came up with an idea. Since it wasn't feasible to go out and buy or collect the materials, he decided to summon a divine opportunity column directly and use it to purchase some from the Vault of Providence. He had already planned to summon a divine opportunity column before, but time had been so short that he hadn't had the opportunity to act on it yet. While summoning a divine opportunity column was costly, having one around was a lifesaver in case of an unavoidable crisis. The cultivators of the arcane glade could use it to escape back to Jianghu, so it was worth the high cost. In addition, the arcane glade was located deep within the Grand Wild's peak, making it an inconvenience to interact with the outside world, like if there was a need to buy something, such as in this case, Lu Yi could connect directly to the Vault of Providence without leaving the area to find the Divine Trade Association. Most large Primus-level arcane glades have their own divine opportunity columns for the convenience of the cultivator's needs. Smaller arcane glades rarely possess the means to summon a divine opportunity column, but an exception was probably going to appear today. Once he made up his mind, Lu Yi respectfully requested for a divine opportunity column. Having already summoned a divine opportunity column once in the Carnage Colosseum, the second time naturally went much smoother for Lu Yi. As Lu Yi spoke, a blue light shot up into the air from the back of his hand, followed by the descent of a majestic object from the sky, creating a powerful aura that swept through the surroundings. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan, who were both cultivating in their respective rooms, were startled by the commotion and quickly came out to investigate. Upon seeing the appearance of a new divine opportunity column in front of Lu Yi, Li Baxian's eyes twitched. Little junior brother, did you summon another divine opportunity column? For a single cultivator in the Cloud River realm to summon 2 divine opportunity columns, and with only a little over a month between each summoning, was probably unprecedented. One divine opportunity column was worth 100,000 contribution points, so 2 columns equaled 200,000 contribution points. Which Cloud River realm cultivator was so wealthy? Li Baxian couldn't help but sigh in amazement at how wealthy his little junior brother was. He really couldn't be compared. Then, when he thought about the 2-point restoration pills Lu Yi bought him that cost 300,000 contribution points each, he realized that he was miserably poor as the senior brother in comparison to him. There's something I want to buy, Lu Yi casually explained. He placed his hand on the divine opportunity column and connected his consciousness to the Vault of Providence. Feng Yuechan sighed. Truly, with wealth comes freedom to do anything one pleases. To summon a divine opportunity column just so he could buy something from the Vault of Providence, this level of extravagance was unsurpassed. However, they couldn't compare with him on such matters. Even though they were disciples of the second-tier sect, the devoted ones with a large family came many mouths to feed, and even for a pampered disciple like Feng Yuechan, the resources allocated to her were still limited. Often, they had to find ways to acquire cultivation resources themselves. But Lu Yi was different. He practically built up the entire Crimson Blood sect on his own, and with his position and strength as the overlord of the Spirit Creek battlefield, he received plenty of benefits there. The Crimson Blood sect was wealthy because of him, so nobody restricted him whenever he used some of the resources. Once they confirmed there was no external threat, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan returned to their rooms to continue cultivating. Meanwhile, Lu Yi stayed in the Vault of Providence for a while and quickly acquired the various materials he needed. Summoning a divine opportunity column cost 100,000 contribution points, but purchasing the materials only cost him less than 1,000 contribution points. Checking his battlefield information, the contribution points section displayed the number 83,520. Through selling various resources in the Spirit Creek battlefield, Lu Yi had accumulated around 300,000 contribution points. However, he quickly spent a large portion of that buying flames of earthen spirits and various other flames. He also bought a spirit storage ring. After entering the Cloud River battlefield, he also bought many mutant cores for Amber to eat as snacks, so he was left with just over 180,000 contribution points. Now, he had once again spent more than 100,000 contribution points. All his spending was still worth it in the end. With a divine opportunity column in the arcane glade, they could enter any time from the outside world, and they would be sent directly into the arcane glade itself. With the various materials now in his possession, Lu Yi followed Lady Yun's formula and processed them. It was his first time doing this, so it was inevitable that he would be slightly clumsy. Fortunately, it wasn't too complicated. In an incense stick of time, 3 bottles of differently colored tattoo materials appeared before him. One was golden, one was ochre, and one was cyan. The wolf mutant with the blue flower on its head was still squatting next to Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and pointed to the golden bottle, saying, "This one is this type." As he spoke, glyph, sharp edge was formed in his hand, emitting a faint brilliance and exuding a sharp aura. Then he pointed to the ochre bottle and said, "This one is this type." The glyph transformed into glyph, protection, emanating a sturdy protective force. Finally, he pointed to the cyan bottle and said, "And the last one is this type." The glyph transformed into glyph, windwalk, and a sense of agility and lightness appeared throughout his entire palm. "So, little one, which one do you want?" Whether it was sharp edge, protection, or windwalk, they were among the simple and practical glyphs that Lu Yi initially obtained, and he had practiced them many times on himself. While he couldn't guarantee a perfect success rate, 80 to 90% was still doable since these 3 glyphs were not complicated. Originally, Lu Yi just wanted to try glyph, sharp edge on the wolf mutant, but now that he had enough materials, he could provide it with more choices. Even though the wolf mutant couldn't understand human speech, it possessed sentience and could naturally understand Lu Yi's simple gestures. After Lu Yi finished speaking, it raised its paw and tapped the golden bottle. Lu Yi nodded. With its fierce and aggressive nature, it was natural for the wolf mutant to pursue the ultimate attack. Since it made a choice, Lu Yi naturally had to fulfill its request. After all, it was his first client, even if it were a mutant beast that couldn't speak. Lu Yi made up his mind to give it a good experience. The question was where to make the tattoo. Glyph, sharp edge was an offensive glyph, so there were only 2 suitable locations, and those were the claws and the mouth. Over the past few days, Lu Yi had witnessed the play fights among the wolf mutants. Their sharp claws and teeth were their natural weapons. Judging by the commotion they created, anyone would think they were fighting to the death, but based on Lu Yi's observations, they were in fact merely honing their skills through this method. Looking at the wolf mutant in front of him with the blue flower on its head, Its strength was undoubtedly relatively low compared to the rest of the pack. Its spiritual essence was not particularly rich, probably only at the level of the 4th or 5th order Cloud River realm. It often suffered disadvantages in battles with other races. After carefully observing the wolf mutant in front of him, Lu Yi made up his mind. He chose to tattoo its mouth as the wolf mutant relied more on its teeth than its claws. Raising his hand, Lu Yi squeezed its wolf mouth shut and turned to Amber. Tell it that it might feel a bit of pain and to keep still. Amber immediately let out a growl. Disdain flashed in the wolf mutant's eyes, clearly not taking Amber's warning to heart. Once everything was prepared, Lu Ye's expression turned serious. Despite having tried it on his own body with many successful attempts, it was still just practice. Strictly speaking, this was his first real tattoo, so he definitely couldn't allow it to fail. The needle was placed right by his side. Lu Yi held the wolf's mouth firmly with one hand and swiftly took out a needle, dipped it in the material from the bottle, and quickly pricked into its skin at lightning speed. His concentration reached its peak at this moment. When the needle came down, his spiritual power surged slightly, and the first primary element was formed. Removing the needle, replacing it, dipping it in the material again, and then piercing again. At the moment the second primary element formed, it perfectly merged with the first one. Lu Ye's movements were extremely fast but orderly. With the fall of each needle, a small, arrowhead-shaped golden mark slowly took shape on the wolf's mouth. The composition of glyph, sharp edge didn't involve a large number of yin-yang elements, only a few dozen. So, Lu Yi was able to finish his work in less than a short 30 breaths. When the final needle came down and the final primary element was formed, the golden mark that had come into form emitted a faint light. The wolf mutant hadn't moved at all throughout the process. There wasn't even a flicker in its eyes. Obviously, the pain during the tattooing process meant nothing to it. Lu Yi let out a breath and released its maw. Carefully looking at it, it seemed that a golden tattoo had appeared on the wolf mutant's mouth, giving it a standout look. This was a visible tattoo, and it was not permanent. It was of the same type as the glyph, wings tattoo that Lu Yi had initially obtained. Lu Ye's proficiency in the way of tattoos was not particularly high. Being able to achieve this level was already his limit. In the future, when his skills improved, he would be able to create hidden or permanent tattoos, but of course, those would require different materials. The wolf mutant eyed Lu Yi with suspicion since it didn't feel any particular change in itself. Activate your mutant powers and give it a try, Lu Yi said. The wolf mutant understood and immediately activated its spirit essence. In the next moment, the golden mark on its mouth shimmered, causing its sharp teeth to emit a faint glow, adding a sense of sharpness. It bared its teeth at Lu Yi, appearing quite imposing. Lu Yi slapped it aside and said, "Go play by yourself." Having become familiar with each other, there was no need for him to be courteous with it. With his first tattoo a perfect success, Lu Yi was in a good mood. Chapter 561, Coincidence. Inside the arcane glade, Lu Yi got up and once again approached the divine opportunity column. He connected his consciousness with the vault of providence, but this time he wasn't there to buy anything. Instead, he wanted to upgrade his inviolable saber. The inviolable saber was currently a middle-grade spirit artifact with 18 enchantments. It had been upgraded once a few months ago from low-grade to middle-grade. However, Lu Yi made rapid advancements recently in his cultivation. In less than 5 months since entering the Cloud River battlefield, he had reached the 4th Order Cloud River realm. Now, he had enough qualifications to wield a higher-grade spirit artifact. Normally, cultivators in the Spirit Creek realm used low-grade spirit artifacts, which could be upgraded to middle grade upon arriving in the Cloud River realm. Around the 5th Order Cloud River realm, they could switch to high-grade spirit artifacts. As for the top-grade spirit artifacts, those were typically used by real Lake Realm cultivators, and beyond that were spell artifacts. Although Lu Ye's cultivation was one order below the 5th order, it wouldn't pose much of a problem. Since he had nothing else to do recently and didn't need to engage in any fights, he decided to take advantage of his free time to upgrade his inviolable saber so he wouldn't have to bother with it later. Inside the Vault of Providence, Lu Yi muttered softly under his breath, "Request, upgrade spirit artifact." He had done this in the past, so he was familiar with the process. As soon as the words left his mouth, his vision warped, and he appeared in a small and empty room with only a counter inside. So, Lu Yi began his wait there. Even if he wanted to put in a request to have his spirit artifact upgraded, there also had to be a free artificer to take his request. Then, the two of them could negotiate the price, set the specifications and time frame, and if no artificers accepted his request then, he would just continue to wait. For a cultivator from Jianghu, this was undoubtedly a convenient process. There was no need to spend any effort in hunting down an artificer himself. He could just do it through the Vault of Providence. And it was not limited to just upgrading spirit artifacts. He could commission a new one, or even ask to have spirit pills and such refined. So, as long as one had skills in a specialized profession, earning contribution points wasn't actually that difficult. Cultivators specialized in refining and alchemy didn't even need to engage in battles. They could simply accept various commissions in the Vault of Providence and earn enough contribution points to meet their own cultivation needs. There were quite a few artificers taking on such commissions in the Vault of Providence. Lu Yi only had to wait a moment before the space in front of him distorted, and a figure appeared. When he looked up, Lu Yi saw a young woman who appeared to be in her 30s. Her skin was fair, and she had a beautiful face. She was dressed in a fitted floral dress that accentuated her graceful curves. Lu Yi was surprised. During these types of transactions within the Vault of Providence, a natural disguise and protection mechanism was provided by the heavens that shrouded the identities and appearances of both parties. Each side was enveloped in a mist that made it impossible for both trading parties to discern each other's identities and even their genders. After all, the two parties involved in such transactions may come from different factions, so disguising their identities and appearances could reduce many unnecessary troubles. However, since Lu Yi received the gift of providence, this disguise had lost its effect on him. He seemed to possess some useless privileges as he could see the artificer he was trading with clearly without any mist enveloping them. Lu Yi's surprise was at the fact that the artificer who came this time was the same woman as last time. This seemed far too coincidental. His inviolable saber had been upgraded from low grade to middle grade by her last time, and Lu Yi was quite satisfied with the result. Since it was her again this time, there shouldn't be any issues. Remaining calm, Lu Yi placed his inviolable saber on the counter in front of him. When the woman picked it up, she furrowed her brows. In a somewhat old voice, she expressed her dissatisfaction. Just a mere middle-grade spirit artifact. Last time, it was just a mere low grade. Apparently, the grade of the spirit artifact was too low to offer her much of a profit. However, unlike last time, the woman didn't finish her sentence. Instead, she seemed to have discovered something as she turned the inviolable saber around and glanced at it, her expression slightly changing. The handle of the inviolable saber used to be inscribed with only one word, inviolable, but since the last upgrade by this woman, a feather symbol had been added. It didn't affect the functionality, and Lu Yi knew that some artificers liked to leave special marks on their works to prove that it was theirs. The feather symbol was undoubtedly the special mark left by this woman. Now she saw her own mark. Surprised, she looked up and glanced at Lu Yi, seemingly not expecting such a coincidence. The spirit artifact that she had once upgraded had appeared before her again. Thinking back, she recalled the event from a few months ago. After all, not many people were willing to pay a hefty price to upgrade a low-grade spirit artifact. Most cultivators would simply exchange them, which wouldn't cost that many contributions anyway. It's only been a few months, yet he needs another upgrade already? How is this guy cultivating so fast? The woman couldn't help but wonder to herself. Even though she couldn't see Lu Yi's face clearly, she had already inferred a few things from the inviolable in her hand. Upgraded to high grade? The woman asked in that aged voice. If one were to judge solely based on her voice, they would think she was an elderly person. In reality, however, she was a charming woman in her prime. Yes. What are your requirements? The shape and length remains the same, 27 enchantments, make sure it's sturdy enough and double the weight. Alright. Name your price. Lu Yi pondered for a moment. The last time, it cost him 2,000 contribution points to upgrade the inviolable saber from low grade to middle grade. Now that he was upgrading from middle grade to high grade, it would surely cost more than before. After some consideration, he made his offer, 5,000 contribution points. The woman raised an eyebrow and a smile appeared on her lips. Clearly, she was satisfied with the price, but mainly she did not expect that a young cultivator from the Cloud River realm like Lu Yi would be so generous. But rather than accept the offer, she said, "It'll be 8,000 contribution points at the very least. Upgrading from middle grade to high grade requires a significant amount of materials, all of which I'll have to purchase myself." Lu Yi watched her. If he didn't have the privilege bestowed upon him by the heavens that allowed him to see her expression, he would have thought she made a reasonable argument. However, now that he had seen the change in her emotions, it was not hard for Lu Yi to realize that he had offered too much at 5,000 contribution points. This woman seemed to be taking him for a fool. Upon careful consideration, Lu Yi understood that while he earned contribution points easily, any other cultivator from the Cloud River realm would have to think twice before spending thousands of contribution points. Forget it. I don't have that many contribution points. While saying so, Lu Yi made to take back the inviolable. It's not like it's non-negotiable, the woman interrupted him in a hurry. 4,000 contribution points? What? The woman's brow twitched. I'm afraid I just realized 4,000 are all the contribution points I have left. You little brat, are you messing with me? Her expression sank. Final offer, 5,000 contribution points, you can retrieve your blade in 3 days. If you agree, then sign the sacred pact. Lu Yi answered with some reluctance. He made a mental note to himself that he would let others name their price the next time he decided to upgrade the inviolable, then he could gradually negotiate for a good price based on their reactions. The woman promptly brought out the sacred pact, listed down the terms, and after Lu Yi checked and confirmed them, both parties signed it. 3 days, the woman said before swiftly disappearing. Lu Yi lingered in the Vault of Providence for a while longer and chanced upon a few flames of earthen spirits out of stock previously and immediately purchased them with contribution points. It seemed that his earlier speculation was correct. The items in the Vault of Providence had a source. He had already bought all the flames of earthen spirits before, but a few more had appeared today. There was no doubt that someone was collecting them from somewhere and selling them to the Vault of Providence. It seemed that he would have to visit the vault from time to time in the future. Who knows, he might find something valuable. Now that there was a divine opportunity column in the arcane glade, it wouldn't take much effort to do so. After his consciousness left the Vault of Providence, Lu Yi turned around and his eyebrow was raised. A large group of wolf mutants were standing quietly behind him, their wolf eyes focused on him, with the tallest wolf, the pack leader, standing 10 meters in front of him. Though Lu Yi had become acquainted with some of the wolf mutants during this period, most of them ignored him, but that wasn't limited to just him. The wolf mutants never showed any signs of affection towards anyone other than Wuxia. Especially the pack leader, who was the most prideful of them. Usually, it wouldn't even spare a glance to Lu Yi and the others. However, it was waiting here today, and it even brought the entire pack with it. Next to the pack leader was the wolf mutant that received the sharp-edge tattoo. It was undoubtedly an honor for it to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the pack leader, something which it didn't have the privilege of doing before. And it seemed to appear somewhat smug with traces of fresh blood still remaining at the corner of its mouth. It was clear that it had won a fight against its companions. Lu Yi immediately understood what was happening. You also want to have that special ability? The pack leader slightly lowered its head, and it was clear what it was trying to express. With just a simple sharp-edge glyph, a wolf mutant's bite could be enhanced by at least 30 to 40%. This improvement was naturally tempting to all the other wolf mutants. That was also the reason why the leader had brought the pack here to wait for Lu Yi. Lu Yi found this situation unexpected. He had originally planned to find a few other wolf mutants he was familiar with and continue practicing with them. Now, he had saved himself a lot of trouble. They had come to him themselves, and the effect would naturally be different than if he had approached them himself. There were over 100 members in the wolf pack, and if Lu Yi could tattoo each wolf mutant, he could accumulate even more experience and insights, which he would be happy to have. After pondering for a moment, he took out the mutant core of a spirit beast from his storage sphere and presented it to the pack alpha. Trade for it with this. The wolf pack would go out hunting every few days, bringing back fresh meat and occasionally some mutant cores. However, the pack would consume the mutant cores themselves. Amber wasn't the only one who loved mutant cores. All spirit beasts enjoyed devouring the mutant cores of other spirit beasts as it accelerated their growth, especially when the mutant cores matched their own elemental affinity. The benefits they could gain were significant. While Lu Yi could provide the wolf mutants with tattoos for free, it would be even better if he could benefit from this opportunity. After all, he had spent contribution points to acquire the materials from the Vault of Providence, and it also took time and effort to tattoo the glyphs. Chapter 562 Tracked. The pack leader glanced at the mutant core in Lu Ye's hand, a hint of human-like expression flickering in its eyes. Then, it slightly lowered its head as if agreeing. Lu Yi felt amazed that he had actually made a deal with a group of mutant beasts. Even though the details of the transaction and the specific price was vague and unclear, the fact that the pack leader agreed meant he could now collect some mutant cores in return from them. It also saved him the trouble of finding targets to practice on, so it was a good thing. He immediately sat cross-legged on the steps of his wooden cabin and took out the materials he had bought from the Vault of Providence, arranging them in a row in front of himself. Just as he had done before, he displayed the different effects of the 3 glyphs in front of the pack leader. Remember, if there's a glyph you need, just choose it and I will tattoo the glyph for you, Lu Yi instructed the wolf mutant. The pack leader turned around, tilting its head. Among the wolf pack, a giant wolf immediately stepped forward and stood in front of Lu Yi. The pack leader raised its paw and tapped on the golden bottle symbolizing glyph, sharp edge. Understood. Lu Yi reached out and grabbed the maw of the wolf mutant in front of him, then took out a needle and began the process. In just a short while, a sharp edge tattoo took shape, leaving a golden arrowhead mark on the mouth of the wolf mutant. The wolf mutant activated its spirit essence and bared its fangs. The sharp fangs were immediately covered in a faint glow, turning even sharper. Though Lu Yi had already witnessed Sharp Edge's power as displayed by his companions in previous fights, seeing how this power was born firsthand felt completely different. Lu Yi clearly saw a hint of surprise in the eyes of the pack leader. Even the quiet wolf pack became restless, their gazes toward Lu Yi becoming heated. This had never happened before. There were over 100 wolf mutants in this wolf pack, and they usually paid little attention to anyone that was not Wuxia. They basically acted as if they didn't exist in the arcane glade. But now, upon realizing that Lu Yi possessed the power to make them stronger, their perception of him undoubtedly underwent some subtle changes. Moreover, this increase in strength came effortlessly without any cost. This made the wolf pack value Lu Yi even more. Another wolf mutant approached under the pack leader's signal, who once again tapped the golden bottle symbolizing glyph, sharp edge. After a short rest, Lu Yi began the next tattoo. The actual time he spent on tattooing was not long, a few dozen breaths at most, but the mental drain he sustained during that short time was immense. With each tattoo made, Lu Yi's technique also became more proficient. While he was busy, outside the Grand Wild's peak, 3 streams of light traveled together, moving swiftly through the air. From the fluctuations of their spiritual power alone, it was clear that the 3 of them were in the 9th Order Cloud River realm. And all 3 of them were 9th Order Cloud River realm cultivators whom Lu Yi had handled before. The black-clad figure in the middle was Tan Xing of the New Moon sect. On his left was Wei Kei from the Clouded Sun clan, and on his right was Xia Liang of the Raving Bladesmen. Compared to his previous state in the Carnage Coliseum, Tan Xing's aura at the moment was undoubtedly somewhat violent. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had become thinner all around. The New Moon sect's outpost in the Spirit Creek battlefield had been conquered and over 50 of their disciples were either killed or injured. The losses were devastating. When Tan Sheng received this news in the Cloud River battlefield, he almost fainted out of anger. It was also at that time that he made a vow to himself to kill Yi and avenge his fallen junior disciples. He was on the verge of advancing into the real lake realm, and he had also gained some benefits in the Carnage Coliseum that could allow him to advance and leave the Cloud River battlefield at any time if he wanted to. But in order to kill Lu Yi, he forcibly delayed his advancement. What qualifications did he have to advance into the real lake realm if he hadn't even settled this deep hatred and enmity? He admitted that he was the one who orchestrated what happened in the Carnage Coliseum, but it was no reason for Yi to target the sect behind him. A matter in the Cloud River realm was brought to the Spirit Creek battlefield, and after suffering such substantial losses, the New Moon sect was powerless to counterattack. Yi was nothing short of a beast. So no matter what, he had to kill Yi on the Cloud River battlefield. Only then could he ascend into the real lake realm with peace of mind. Wei Kei had the same reasons as Tan Sheng, but compared to the New Moon sect, his Clouded Sun clan suffered fewer casualties. Only their outpost was broken into and they suffered a significant loss of contribution points. Wei Kei didn't have the same intense hatred that Tan Sheng had. He was more concerned about the substantial reward he would receive for killing Lu Yi. After Lu Ye's second robbery of the Thousand Demon Ridge's major sects and clans in the Spirit Creek battlefield, his bounty had increased significantly. As for Xiaoliang, he did not come for Lu Yi, but to find Li Baxin instead. For Xiaoliang, Yan Xing was like both a brother and a father figure to him, and such a person was killed by Li Baxin. Since learning that Li Baxin had entered the Cloud River battlefield, he had been searching for his whereabouts. Unfortunately, the Cloud River battlefield was too vast, and finding one person in such a place was like finding a needle in a haystack. However, Lu Yi and Li Baxin had a close relationship. If they could capture Lu Yi, Li Baxin would definitely not stand idly by. This was part of the reason why he attacked Lu Yi in the Carnage Coliseum back then. The convergence of these three individuals in such a vast battlefield was naturally no coincidence but a hunt on Lu Yi led by Tan Sheng. Wei Kei and Xiaoliang were both invited here by him. They didn't invite more people since the three of them, who were in the Ninth Order, was more than enough to deal with Yi. So what if they got more people like last time? He still managed to escape from them. Moreover, the main reason he was able to escape last time was thanks to the Golden Body token. With that thing protecting him, no one could break through his defenses, but there was no way that Yi could possess another one of them. So, as long as they could find his whereabouts, they could definitely kill him. During their flight, Wei Kei said, "Brother Tan, can we be sure that Yi entered the Grand Wilds Peak?" Tan Sheng remained silent and took out a compass-like object from his clothes. He lowered his head to examine it and said, "I'm sure." The compass looked similar to a tracking disc, but its actual effectiveness was far inferior. A tracking disc could clearly indicate the location of the target and provide a very specific direction. The closer the distance, the stronger the response on the tracking disc. However, the compass spirit artifact in Tan Sheng's hand couldn't do that. It could only point one in a general direction. Strictly speaking, this thing was like a severely limited version of a tracking disc. Even so, this object was extremely valuable and was hard to find throughout the entirety of Jianghu. It was acquired at a great cost by the New Moon sect, who purchased it from the Divine Trade Association before having it delivered to Tan Sheng in the Cloud River battlefield by one of the disciples. It was obtained solely for the purpose of tracking Lu Ye's whereabouts so that they could get revenge for the destruction of their sect's outpost as well as the killing of their disciples. So, even though it was a severely limited version of a tracking disc, it was no problem for it to point out a general direction for them. Following the guidance of this compass, the three of them hurried towards the Grand Wilds Peak. If Yi is only in the Third Order, then even if he received the reward from the roster of Carnage, and even if he has reached the Fourth Order now, it wouldn't be wise for him to enter the Grand Wilds Peak. Why would he go there? Experience, cultivation. There has to be reasons, Tan Sheng casually replied. And don't forget, the reward for ranking first on the roster of Carnage includes a Primus-level wisp of Sanctification. Wei Kei's eyes lit up at that. Brother Tan means, Tan Xing scoffed. The value of a Primus-level arcane glade is extraordinary. Even if Yi obtains a Primus-level wisp of Sanctification, he wouldn't dare to settle down arbitrarily. He has to find an inconspicuous area to settle the wisp of Sanctification, and Grand Wild's Peak is undoubtedly a good choice. Although it is very dangerous there, as long as he is lucky, he may find a suitable place to reduce the risk of the arcane glade being discovered by others. Wei Kei's eyes brightened. That's a good point. If Yi Ye's goal in entering the Grand Wild's Peak was to settle a wisp of Sanctification, then it made sense. In that case, if they succeeded this time, not only could they obtain a large bounty but also a Primus-level wisp of Sanctification. However, compared to the reward they would get from Thousand Demon Ridge, the temptation of a Primus-level wisp of Sanctification seemed pale in comparison. Nevertheless, it would still be an extra gain. Also, Brother Xia. If things are as I suspect, then Li Baxin might be with Lu Yi. Tan Xing made another astonishing statement. Xia Liang's eyes, who had been silent all this while, suddenly turned sharper. How so? Currently, the Crimson Blood sect only has a few cultivators in the Cloud River realm, so it's impossible for Yi to monopolize a Primus-level arcane glade by himself. You should also be aware of Li Baxian's situation within the Devoted Ones. They have their own arcane glade, but it is unlikely that Li Baxian would get the opportunity to enter and cultivate there. If Yi has a Primus-level arcane glade, do you think he wouldn't invite Li Baxian to settle there with him? Xia Liang's eyes became even brighter. If that's truly the case, this will be interesting. The sound of a blade suddenly rang out, and as the bright saber light flashed by, Xia Liang had already rushed forward like an arrow released from a bow. A huge flying beast approached from the front, and when the two figures passed by each other, a rain of blood filled the sky. Xia Liang had effortlessly cut down a powerful flying beast equivalent to the 7th Order Cloud River realm with a single slash. Wei Kei looked at him with envy. Even if they were both 9th Order Cloud River realm cultivators, Wei Kei couldn't compare to Xia Liang at all. Even Tan Xing surpassed him. The reason behind this was that Wei Kei's foundation in the Spirit Creek realm wasn't solid enough. Though all three of them had advanced into the Cloud River realm with 360 spirit points, only Tan Xing and Xia Liang had their names on the roll of supremacy while Wei Kei had never left his mark on it. Xia Liang was filled with fighting spirit, Tan Xing sought revenge, and Wei Kei had his eyes on the bounty. On this day, the three 9th Order cultivators followed the trail and ventured deep into the Grand Wild's Peak. Inside the arcane glade, Louis had tattooed nearly 30 wolf mutants before waving his hand at the pack leader in front of him. Come back tomorrow. He had depleted his mental energy and would need some rest in order to recover. Not all the tattoos he did were glyph, sharp edge. Some of them were glyph, protection, and glyph, windwalk. The choice of the glyphs was up to the pack leader. Lu Yi had summarized a rule that those above the 5th Order, not including those in the 5th Order itself, would receive glyph, sharp edge. Below that, they either got glyph, protection, or glyph, windwalk. Glyph, protection was tattooed on their abdomen, while glyph, windwalk was on their legs. The pack leader undoubtedly made these choices for the weaker members of the pack so that they could gain enough of a self-defense capability. Chapter 563, Master You? Every day, besides tattooing various glyphs for the wolf mutants, Lu Yi spent his time cultivating and reading books. Now that the spiritual qi in Arcane Glade had completely stabilized, the cultivation environment was excellent. Combined with the consumption of vital spirit pills, Lu Ye's cultivation efficiency reached an all-time high. Of course, even so, it couldn't compare with the speed of cultivating with an amulet. For cultivators, cultivating with amulets would always be the fastest way to improve one's cultivation. After 3 days, all the wolf mutants received different tattoos. During these 3 days, Lu Yi also obtained more than a dozen mutant cores from the wolf mutants. They were all brought back from their hunting trips, and the quality of the mutant cores varied, but overall, they were pretty good. After the last wolf mutant had its tattoo done, the entire wolf pack suddenly gathered together. The tall figure of the pack leader stood out among the pack. As it howled to the sky, the wolf pack echoed along. Then, the pack leader turned around and while leading its pack, charged out of Ameliorate Valley with great momentum. Lu Yi was curious and wondered where the wolf pack was going. Recently, though the wolf pack did go out to hunt, they had never all left before. At most, a group of wolf mutants was sent out while the majority stayed in the valley. This was the first time they had all left like this. Moreover, from the momentum of their departure, it felt like they were a large army setting out on an expedition. Could they be going to seek revenge from some spirit beast? Lu Yi wondered to himself. The overall strength of the wolf pack was indeed powerful, but that didn't mean they were uncontested in the Grand Wilds Peak. They might have suffered losses under some enemies in the past, which is why they relied on Wuxia's cultivation to enhance the strength of their pack. Now, with Lu Yi's tattoos, their overall strength could not have increased too much, but 20 to 30% was still possible, giving them the confidence to seek revenge. Of course, Lu Yi couldn't be sure if that truly were the case. By nightfall, the wolf pack still hadn't returned. Lu Yi roasted some snake meat and had a simple meal, then he got up and went to the Divine Opportunity column, pressing his hand on it and connecting to the Vault of Providence. Soon, he appeared in the small room dedicated to the commissioning of spirit artifact upgrades. The agreed-upon time with the woman had arrived. To his puzzlement, however, there were no signs of the woman even after he waited for more than 2 hours. Lu Yi wasn't worried that she would keep his inviolable out of greed. They had already signed the sacred pact, and if she failed to deliver the inviolable on time, she would undoubtedly suffer the punishment of the heavens. Even if she was a real lake or even divine ocean realm cultivator, she wouldn't be able to withstand it. So as long as she was alive, she would definitely deliver the inviolable. However, things would be troublesome if the opposite were true. The inviolable had been with Lu Yi for several years and he had formed a bond with it. Even if he were to replace it with an identical saber, it would undoubtedly affect the output of his power. It can't be that coincidental. Did she really die? Time passed little by little, and as the deadline approached, the space in front of Lu Yi suddenly distorted, and the woman's figure appeared. Lu Yi looked up and saw that her face was somewhat pale. There were even faint traces of dried blood at the corners of her mouth. It was clear that she had just fought with someone and was injured. When she saw Lu Yi waiting here, the woman let out a long sigh of relief. She placed the inviolable on the counter in front of her and continued using her old voice to deceive Lu Yi. "I have accomplished your request. Please take a look." Lu Yi picked up the inviolable and casually weighed it in his hands. Indeed, it was twice as heavy as before, and it felt just right in his hand. Upon drawing the saber, he found that the already dark blade appeared even deeper in color, but within the darkness was a sense of sharpness. His mind stirred as he examined the various enchantments on the blade. There were indeed 27 enchantments. All the requirements were met. As for how much the inviolable had increased in power, that would have to be tested in actual combat. However, since the inviolable was also upgraded from low grade to middle grade by the same person, there shouldn't be any problems with this upgrade. Thanks to their previous cooperation, Lu Yi had some confidence in the woman's craftsmanship. "No problem." Lu Yi nodded affirmatively. As soon as he finished speaking, the sacred pact took effect, and with a slight warmth on the back of his hand, the agreed-upon amount of contribution points were deducted. The transaction was complete, and there was no need to linger any longer. Lu Yi wasn't interested in knowing how she had been injured, nor did he need to inquire about it in order to avoid exposing some of his own secrets. Just as he was about to leave, the woman suddenly called out to him. "Wait, young friend." Lu Yi looked up at her. "You're in the Cloud River realm, aren't you?" "I am." With the grade of the inviolable evident, it was only natural that the other party would be able to guess such a thing so easily. Young friend should still be planning to upgrade this blade to top grade in the future, right? Possibly. In that case, why not take my imprint? If you have any needs in the future, You can contact me directly without having to go through any trouble. This proposal was somewhat unexpected to Lu Yi, but judging by her expression, it seemed that she still wanted to profit from him. It was understandable. Anyway, he would still need to come here to commission someone if he wanted to further upgrade the saber in the future, and if he could entrust it to an acquaintance, it would save him some trouble. Sure. The woman then raised her hand and brushed it against her battlefield imprint. A glimmer of light drifted towards Lu Yi, who raised his hand, and the light landed on his own battlefield imprint located on the back of his hand. What should I call you? Lu Yi asked. Just call me Master Yu, the woman replied. But if you want to find this old woman, you'll have to leave the Cloud River battlefield first. You won't be able to contact me while you're inside. The woman's cultivation level was undoubtedly above the Cloud River realm, and her true body should be somewhere in Jianghu. Understood. Lu Yi nodded slightly. With a thought, his figure disappeared and he left the space. The woman was left frowning. He didn't even tell me his name. What an impolite youngster. After muttering to herself, she quickly left as well. She was injured and needed to heal as soon as possible. Inside the wooden cabin in the arcane glade, Lu Yi inspected the inviolable. He infused his spiritual power into it, and compared to before, it seemed to flow more smoothly. Over the course of this long period, small traces were left on the blade as Lu Yi fought with the saber. No matter how sturdy the inviolable saber was, it was inevitable that it would show some signs of wear and tear. However, after the upgrade, all these tiny marks had disappeared, and the entire saber seemed to have been reborn. Setting aside the woman's pretentious personality, her craftsmanship in the art of spirit artifact refinement was indeed impressive. In fact, if Lu Yi wanted to, he could also cultivate the way of artification. With his foundation as a glyph weaver, he should be able to progress twice as fast in that discipline. However, there was only so much a single person could do. In addition to being a glyph weaver, which was his main focus on cultivation, he also cultivated the way of wards and way of tattoos, so he had no more energy to spare. He took out a seed of the mystic fruit from his storage sphere in preparation to enter the Rift of Illusions to test out his saber in actual combat. As he immersed his mind into it, he quickly appeared in that unique small space, the surroundings of which he surveyed vigilantly at once. Since the incident when he was slashed by an unknown person in this place, Lu Yi had always been cautious whenever he used the seed of the mystic fruit to enter the Rift of Illusions. However, so much time had passed and he had not encountered that person again. Firstly, neither of them entered the Rift of Illusions for training that frequently. After all, each entry into the Rift of Illusions consumed a certain amount of contribution points. Secondly, this small space was only a transit point, and as long as they didn't enter simultaneously, they wouldn't meet each other. It was just a great coincidence that he had encountered another person here that time. After spending 100 contribution points, Lu Yi pushed open the large door and stepped into the Rift of Illusions before standing there with blade in hand. Mist rolled around him. Soon, a figure charged out from behind the curtain of mist. Before the other person arrived before him, telekinetic techniques had already been sent out in Lu Ye's direction. This time, the opponent he encountered in the Rift of Illusions was a cultivator, and judging from the momentum of their attack, they were also in the Fourth Order Cloud River realm, just like Lu Yi. The strength of the opponents in the Rift of Illusions was always linked to Lu Ye's own strength. If he entered with a cultivation in the Fourth Order Cloud River realm, then the opponent's strength would also be in the Fourth Order. The difficulty would gradually increase until he could no longer resist them and was eventually expelled. However, facing opponents at the same level was already a common occurrence for Lu Yi. He confronted the numerous beams of light that came at him, and the inviolable ignited with flames, blocking all of the incoming attacks before charging directly at the enemy. As the blade flashed past, and the enemy's figure disintegrated, the mist surged and this time, two figures charged out. Brandishing his saber, a blade light cut through the air. Lu Ye's figure moved agilely within the Rift of Illusions, the inviolable burning with a dazzling flame as one enemy fell after another. After being upgraded to high grade, The inviolable undoubtedly had much greater destructive power, but correspondingly, the consumption of spiritual power became more intense on him. This was unavoidable. This was also the reason why cultivators of different realms could use different grades of spirit artifacts. If a cultivator in the Spirit Creek realm were given a high-grade spirit artifact, even if they could activate it, they wouldn't be able to sustain it for long before their spiritual power was completely drained. With Lu Ye's current cultivation, which was in the 4th order, he could barely handle the power drain of a high-grade spirit artifact. If he could raise his cultivation to the 5th order, it would be much easier to handle. He had been considering whether to replace the flying weapons in his weapon holder with high-grade spirit artifacts, but after this test, he decided against it. It was not that he couldn't afford it, it just felt unnecessary. The primary method of killing for a combat cultivator was close-quarters combat, whereas the way of telekinesis was just an embellishment, providing a means of long-range combat to avoid the awkward situation of being attacked from afar without being able to fight back. However, compared to the telekinetic techniques of other combat cultivators, Lu Ye's telekinetic techniques were undoubtedly more lethal since he could enhance them with glyphs. Glyph, Windwalk made his telekinetic techniques faster, and Glyph, Sharp Edge made them more powerful, and this was something that most cultivators would struggle to compare with. After an hour, Lu Ye was expelled from the Rift of Illusions. He felt a slight tingling sensation in his mind, which quickly disappeared. This was undoubtedly a benefit of having a powerful divine soul. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.